There is a moment that happens to certain people very early in life, a moment where childhood quietly ends before anybody notices, not because something dramatic happened, not because they suddenly became mature overnight, but because they started seeing things they were never supposed to fully understand at young, the tension between parents during ordinary conversations, the fake smiles adults use when something is wrong, the way people say "I'm fine" while clearly meaning the opposite, and slowly, without realizing it, he becomes more observant than expressive, while everyone else around him is simply living. His mind starts analyzing. He notices moods, patterns, changes in tone, the emotional atmosphere in a room, and when someone grows up paying attention to emotions this early, something strange begins to happen. They start feeling older than everyone around them, not smarter, not better, just emotionally heavier somehow. Even during teenage years, there is often this quiet disconnect. Friends are laughing about temporary drama while his mind drifts toward bigger thoughts. Why people become distant. Why relationships slowly fade. Why happiness always feels temporary, and because these thoughts are difficult to explain, he learns to hide them. That is usually where the humor starts, especially dark humor, the kind of jokes that sound funny at first, then oddly concerning a second later, jokes about stress, burnout, emotional numbness, existential thoughts. Everyone laughs. And he laughs too. But psychologically, dark humor is rarely just humor. For many people who always felt older than their age, it becomes emotional camouflage, a way to express difficult feelings without fully exposing them, because direct vulnerability feels uncomfortable, sometimes even dangerous. So instead of saying, "I feel emotionally exhausted," he jokes about losing his sanity. Instead of admitting loneliness, he sarcastically talks about how draining people are. Instead of saying life feels overwhelming, he turns it into irony, and after a while, this becomes automatic. The mind learns that humor is safer than honesty. Psychologists often talk about humor as a defense mechanism, but people misunderstand what that actually means. A defense mechanism is not fake emotion. It is real emotion wearing a socially acceptable disguise. That is why some people can joke about painful things so casually. The pain is real. The joke simply makes it easier to carry, and this pattern becomes especially common in people who matured emotionally too early, because early emotional maturity usually does not come from peace. It comes from adaptation. When someone grows up in emotionally unpredictable environments, the brain becomes hyper-aware. It starts monitoring everything, facial expressions, tone changes, energy shifts. The mind quietly learns that understanding people emotionally is connected to safety, and over time, this hyper-awareness changes personality. These people often become calm during chaos, funny during uncomfortable moments, detached during emotional conversations, not because they feel less, usually because they feel too much. That is an important distinction. A lot of emotionally older people are not emotionally cold at all. They are emotionally overloaded, but since they spent years managing emotions internally, they stop expecting others to truly understand what is happening inside them. So humor becomes translation, a way to release emotional pressure without fully opening the door, and honestly, people around them often reinforce this behavior without realizing it, because the funny person becomes easy to be around. People enjoy someone who can make painful things feel lighter, someone who stays composed, someone who can joke through difficult moments, but very few stop to ask what happens when a person becomes emotionally performative for too long, because eventually, something starts feeling disconnected. The jokes continue. The sarcasm continues. The self-awareness continues, but underneath it, there is often emotional fatigue, a quiet exhaustion from constantly converting real emotions into entertaining versions, and this creates one of the strangest contradictions. In people who always felt older than their age, they can understand emotions deeply, sometimes better than everyone around them, yet they struggle to express their own emotions directly. They can comfort others easily, analyze people perfectly, read emotional tension instantly, but when someone asks how they are actually doing, the answer almost automatically becomes another joke, because somewhere along the way, vulnerability started feeling unnatural, even when they desperately want connection. That is another thing people misunderstand. Emotionally older people are not always emotionally distant because they dislike closeness. Many of them crave genuine connection more than anyone else, but they also learned very early that exposing emotions can lead to disappointment, being misunderstood, Feeling emotionally dismissed. So they develop personalities that stay emotionally nearby without fully letting anyone in. Funny, observant, easy to talk to, yet strangely difficult to truly know. And after years of this, loneliness starts becoming complicated, not the obvious kind, the quieter kind, the feeling of being surrounded by people while still feeling psychologically unseen, because people know the humor. They know the personality, they know the sarcasm, but very few know the emotional weight underneath it. There is also something else happening psychologically. People who felt older than their age often become uncomfortable with their own emotional needs. They become the strong one too early, the mature one, the emotionally controlled one, and eventually, they stop feeling comfortable asking for comfort themselves. So instead of saying they are struggling, they minimize everything. They joke, they deflect, they intellectualize their feelings, and the scary part is that sometimes they become so good at hiding emotions that even they forget how much they are carrying, until certain moments happen, a random late-night thought, a quiet emotional breakdown nobody sees, a joke that suddenly feels too honest, and for a second, the emotional mask slips, not completely, just enough to reveal the exhaustion underneath, because constantly being emotionally self-aware is tiring, constantly analyzing yourself is tiring. Constantly monitoring your emotions before expressing them is tiring, and many people who always felt older than their age spend years carrying emotional heaviness silently while pretending it weighs nothing. But despite all this, there is usually something deeply empathetic about them too, because people who understand emotional pain internally often become highly sensitive to it in others. They notice sadness quickly. They recognize emotional discomfort instantly. They understand the emotions people try to hide, and ironically, the people making the darkest jokes are often the same people trying hardest to make everyone else feel emotionally safe, because they know what emotional heaviness feels like, even if they rarely admit how much of it they carry personally. Maybe that is what feeling older than your age really means, not acting serious all the time. Not behaving mature for attention, but developing emotional awareness too early, learning how to emotionally survive before learning how to emotionally relax, and once someone becomes emotionally hyper-aware, they often never fully return to simple thinking again. So the humor stays. The sarcasm stays. The emotional detachment stays, not because emotions are absent, but because they are often too present, and somewhere underneath every dark joke is usually someone trying to make difficult emotions feel lighter for just a few moments longer, long enough to carry them, long enough to keep moving, even if nobody around them fully notices what the humor is actually protecting.